right, let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. When was the last time you put on a pair of new work boots and didn't hate your life for the next 2 weeks? Because I'm here with Brunt, and I gotta know, what was your experience? I'm serious. I put these on, and I'm waiting for the catch. Right now, I'm wearing the Marin, but I've also checked out the Omen. These boots were comfortable right out of the box. No blisters, no breaking them in, and that blew my mind. Because every other boot brand I've ever worn, they punish you first and then try to apologize later. Brunt was founded by Eric Gerard, a blue-collar guy who got sick of big workwear brands selling out and forgetting the people actually doing the work. So he built Brunt for real tradesmen. Brunt figured out what everybody else ignored. Comfort and durability doesn't need to be a trade-off. These belts are tough. They're built to perform, and they won't wreck your feet. Waterproof, safety toe, soft toe, pull-on, lace-up, you name it. And here's the best part. If you wear them to work and they're not right, send them back. So listen, you work too hard for bad boots. Right now, you can get $10 off with code Chael at bruntworkwear.com. Use the code, get the boots, and if they ask you where you heard about them, tell them Chael sent you.
And new Justin Gaethje. Wow. You know, I almost had to correct myself there. I almost was going to say Paddy the Baddy, because it kind of felt like an unreal win. And everything in this sport is so obvious in hindsight. Like, as soon as it's done, you think, well, how did I not see that? How did I miss that? The entire press conference is done for marketing, but subsequent of that, it is done to convince us, right? Like, which guy seems more sure? They both know who's going to win. Paddy and Gaethje both know who the better fighter is everywhere. They know who's better on the ground, who's a better wrestler, who's in better shape. They know all of these things. And then they pretend it's themselves, and then they cross their fingers for a good night. Because you will have good performances and you will have bad performances, and that is just the way that this business goes. So when you watch a press conference, you're largely sitting there for entertainment value. But if you're better, you're trying to figure out the tells. You're just trying to figure out between these two guys that already know who's going to win, who in fact is going to win. That is what this, I got to tell you, they both seem confident. And let me share my perspective from the day that this was announced. Justin Gaethje was going to win. Now, many times in Paddy's fight career, I felt that way. Okay, hey, he's in over his head. That started with King Green. When they signed him with King Green, it's like, okay, they've gone too far. And then that fight was weird. Like either that fight was weird. It was an unusual. What's weird? If you go do it 5 more times, it would not look like that. Whatever the result was, but it wouldn't look like that. That was a strange. There was some things that happened. That was a weird fight. Okay. It was either that. It was either a weird fight, or Paddy was that good. And for whatever reason, as the viewer, that's the harder one to accept. So we've got to see it again. And we do. And then all of a sudden, it's Michael Chandler. And the gig is up at Michael Chandler. Now Paddy is just simply, it's boy against man. It's newcomer versus grizzly veteran. Let me show you, kid, how this game is played. That's what it felt like going into that. And that's when we realized, no, hey, Paddy's a real contender. Paddy is now 8-0. Paddy is an undefeated UFC fighter. By the way, Paddy's not some little punk kid. Paddy's 31, 32 years old. Paddy's married. Paddy's got kids. Like, Paddy's a man. This is not just a boy. This is not just a kid. But this is when you start to kind of get this realization. So Paddy's now going to fight Justin Gaethje. But it did feel a little bit like, even accepting that, hey, Paddy's 31, 32 years old. Hey, Paddy's got a couple of kids. Paddy's got a family. Paddy's a husband. Like, even in light of that, it still felt like Big Brother is going to be Justin Gaethje. And The big problem I had, one of the reasons I was so confident in Justin Gaethje is the follow-up question, right? Whenever you say who's going to win, what you don't know a lot of times, psychologically, you're really telling us who do you like more, who is more popular, who's the cooler of these two, who's the bigger star, whose name have you heard more often. That's largely what you're saying. It's the follow-up that makes you possibly change that stance. It's a follow-up that would change you from going, oh my goodness, Justin Gaethje's going to kill. Oh, there's nothing to see here. The follow-up question is the one that then gets you to part with your paycheck and walk up to the window, walk up to DraftKings, say, hey, I'd like to double my money. And that follow-up question is how? And that is why I was so confident in telling you guys Justin Gaethje was going to win. It was just the how. How's Paddy going to beat him? And there was an answer to that question. There was an answer from Paddy's team. There was an answer from Paddy himself. I'm going to submit him. And that seemed unlikely because when you play the great Paddy's wonderful on the ground, there's really nobody that is so unwonderful on the ground that they can get submitted. There's really nobody in the UFC. If you see a submission anymore in martial arts, broad stroke, but what you're seeing is a guy that was tired, and then the submission is the way out. I know the submission gets presented as the dominant art in MMA that ties itself all the way back to 1993. In 1993, there was guys that were actually getting submitted. They were getting their limbs or their carotid artery put in techniques that they were not familiar with. But that doesn't happen today. And that's a broad stroke, but that doesn't happen today. When somebody gets submitted, it means they were tired and they wanted out. And I just share with you, so now you're talking about Justin Gaethje quitting. That's hard to believe. But for you clinger-ons that don't want to accept that submissions really are not part of the sport, for you guys, you still have to back up another step, which is how are you going to get to that position? The position that the referee is going to start them in 5 times is not the position needed to find a submission. And the idea that you're going to take Gaethje down is a tough one. That's a really tough one. That's a Division I All-American. Khabib got him down. And Chandler tried like hell to get him down. And there's been other guys that have gotten him off his feet. I mean, enough that you could say Justin was down, but he just doesn't stay there. So now you're talking about Paddy, by his own admission, I'm going to beat this guy, but I've got one way to beat this guy. I must finish this guy, and I am going to finish this guy, but I'm going to do it by submission. I'm going to do it by submission. Sounds easy, but it's very complex. That means I'm going to have to get across the cage. I'm going to have to get a hold of him. I'm going to have to exert some kind of a technique where I change elevation, close distance, get my hands on his legs or his body, secure a position, take him to the mat, hold him there, advance position, and then lock on a technique that is superior to the defense of said technique by Justin Gaethje. I mean, do you see where it gets complicated fast? And those things just aren't realistic. They're not realistic once. And it's tough to believe that you're going to need to be able to do that once. If your strategy is submission, then your strategy is groundwork. If your strategy is groundwork in this situation, then you're telling us that Paddy the Baddy can take Justin Gaethje down 5 times. And the best case scenario that when he takes him there, he can keep him there. He's going to be able to do that 5 times. That's a lot of takedowns. That's 4 more than Khabib got. That's 5 more than Chandler got. That's 5 more than Eddie Alvarez got. That's 5 more than Max Holloway got. That's 5 more than Dustin Poirier got. Right? You take all those guys, you put them together, you're still short 5 takedowns. So it was really tough. And meanwhile, how's Justin Gaethje going to win? Well, he's going to punch him repeatedly on his feet. And don't worry about how's he going to get there. The referee's going to start them there. So see where it's a little bit of a different thing? So there's a very big advantage given to a striker. And there's a much bigger arsenal when you have an All-American wrestler who became a striker. I mean, it's one of the most intimidating formulas out there. All right. And this was Gaethje's shot. Can't forget that. Gaethje called this shot, and he didn't care who the opponent was. He came from a very competitive standpoint. In fact, when Gaethje started this whole banging of the drums of I'm the guy and I deserve a shot at the belt, he thought he was talking about Ilia Topuria, and he understood he might be talking about Arman Tsarukyan. He did not care. Let me fight Ilia Topuria or Arman Tsarukyan or release me from my contract. That was his stance. With a greater caveat of, I'm going to fight for the belt or else. So then in comes Paddy. Now you find out, well, what kind of competitor are you really? Because nobody wanted to fight Paddy, particularly the veterans. Because Paddy does have, while Paddy is not some young kid up and coming, he has the perception of a young kid up and coming, and that's just not what a veteran wants. But Gaethje said title. It turned out Gaethje meant it. So he ends up in there with Paddy the Baddy. And I bring you this piece, and any of you that follow me closely go, hey, Chael, aren't you taking a little false praise here? You're acting like you knew it was Justin Gaethje. You picked Paddy the Baddy. Yeah, okay, so let's get to the rest of the story. This is how I felt. Everything that I've told you is truly how I felt going into this match. Then I go out to Florida. I'm out in Florida, and I'm doing some MMA stuff. Glenn brings a bunch of us out, but Glenn then takes us all to dinner. So when I get to dinner, and I say this, I'm not attempting to name drop for you here, but to tell the story, I'm forced to name drop. When I'm at dinner, got Aljo, I got Chris Weidman, I got Dustin Poirier, I got Michael Chandler, I got Laura Senko, I got Coach Dean Thomas. I have some of the great minds in MMA. Truly, minds that you all respect. And I asked them, who's going to win that fight? And it was overwhelming Paddy. In fact, one of those athletes even laughed when I asked. Laughed at me. He goes, Paddy. Of course it's going to be Paddy. And that's what that convinced me. Because I didn't really know. I mean, there is something historically to be said for the youth. And while I'm not overly confident that Paddy can go take Gaethje down 5 times, he would need 5 takedowns to win a judge's decision. For what he said, which is a submission, he really just needs 1 takedown. And in addition to that, I'm not really convinced that Paddy can't fight on his feet. Like, there was definitely a narrative going around that if this is on its feet, it's going to be all Justin Gaethje. And I wasn't buying into that. I've just seen that not true enough times. Ankalaev was able to stay on his feet with Alex Pereira. In fact, surprisingly, the night that Ankalaev lost to Alex Pereira, it was on the ground and he was on bottom. Just for example, George St. Pierre was supposedly only able to wrestle. And he gets in there with Matt Hughes, who's able to stop his wrestling. St. Pierre kicks him in the head, takes his title away. But that's when we all found out, oh, George knows how to fight in the stand-up, too. Then George went on, had other guys he couldn't take down and beat them up on the feet, too. Ask BJ Penn. Ask Josh Koscheck. Ask Johnny Hendricks. Like, a lot of times we just don't see how good a guy's plan B is. We don't know it about Khabib to this day. Khabib had 29 fights. He was able to stick with plan A in all 29. So in our minds, we've decided, well, Khabib wasn't much of a stand-up fighter. He never lost in the stand-up of a fight. So there's two ways to look at it. And I kind of thought, I'll bet you Paddy's one of those. I'll bet you Paddy's got some moves. Now, all of fight week, it did start to feel different. Justin Gaethje had a very clear stick up his ass. Very clear. And I mean, that thing was jammed way up there. You ever wake up cranky? This dude woke up cranky every day of fight week. He told 2 different media reporters off just that I saw. There's one media reporter, because Justin's got this staph infection. There's one media reporter says to him, "What's wrong with you?" Justin takes a step back, looks the guy up and down, and goes, "What's wrong with you?" Guy goes, "No, I mean you're on your neck. You're." And Gaethje goes, "You ever heard of HIPAA?"